Robert Allen.
Tonight we ride, right or wrong. Tonight we sail on a radio song. Rescue me, should I go down? If I stay too long in trouble town. Oh, yeah, you wreck me, baby. Yeah, you break me in two. But you move me, honey. Yes, you do. Now
Welcome into the Robert Allen and Friends Show, Triple Play Sports Radio Network, here on Friday, 93.1, 105.1 FM, 1020 AM, 1580 AM, and the Triple Play Sports Radio app. Patrick Wheeler here with you, filling in for Robert this week and into Monday. Thanks for hanging out with me this week. It's been a lot of fun. We've gotten into a ton of stuff. Breaking news, obviously, yesterday. Which isn't good news. College football, it's taken a step backwards, at least in one conference. We'll talk plenty about that coming up. Hopefully going to get Jason Whitlock on here very soon. He is I'd call him media superstar. I think that's the best way to describe it. Dude's been on ESPN, was previously on Fox Sports with the Speak for Yourself show. If anyone ever saw that, it was really fantastic. Wrote for the Kansas City Star. He's with Outkick.com, so we can get him on here shortly. Again, we're gonna dive into a ton of this Big Ten news and how it could ultimately affect Oklahoma State and the Big 12. How could it possibly affect some other conferences? If you didn't hear yet, the Big Ten has decided they're going to conference only for football, for all fall sports, but for football is the one that pretty much everybody cares about. And that's the start. That's the start. I have heard news that the SEC or the Pac-12, the ACC. Is thinking about doing the same thing. I'm telling you, this is pretty ridiculous. If I have to be honest with you, this is a little ridiculous. And I say that because, sorry, I'm trying to multitask here and get Jason on with me. I say that because of the data that I have and that we've all been able to look into, okay? It just doesn't make sense. And consider this my outline to where I'm going to go with it later on in the show, because it is absolutely way too early for these types of decisions. Bottom line. So the Pac-12 and the ACC reportedly, this has not been confirmed, but reportedly planning on doing the same type of thing for football. Which, to be honest, I would have not been surprised if the Pac-12 really been the first conference in the Power 5 to do this. I think the Big Ten has taken a pretty big leap here. And then I wish I could sit here and be like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Big Ten, they must know what they're doing. But I just can't. So it's an unfortunate step in the time where I think we are so easily overreacting to everything. It's like we have to be the first. We got to make sure that nobody thinks differently of us. It's one of those situations. I think there's a lot of people that don't want to be looked at in the wrong light, which is It's tough, I'm telling you. So we'll talk about all that. Oklahoma State basketball officially got their numbers out with the NBA Combine. Impressive numbers. I think we talked about it. A caller called yesterday and said, "You see Montreal Peña's numbers?" Wow, I did, and they are very impressive. We'll discuss that. TCL. Kate Cabinets had a huge night last night. The TCL. Oklahoma released their latest coronavirus numbers, and I'll tell you why that's important. I'm going to take an early break here now, come back here quickly and see if we can get Jason on with us, hopefully next year on the Robert Allen and Friends Show with Patrick Wheeler. All right, welcome back to the Robert Allen and Friends Show, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler filling in for Robert Allen, and joining me now is Jason Whitlock. And Jason, I like to describe you as kind of like a media superstar. I think is one of the best ways to is that fair to call you that?
I think of myself more as a supersized meal, but
hey man,
I'll take it.
Okay, well, hey, whatever works. Jason is, I know, man, the list of everything that you've been on, ESPN, wrote for the Kansas City Star, or pardon me, it's not the Star, it's called the, what was the name of it there?
Kansas City Star.
Yeah, it was a Star, okay. Kansas City Star, and obviously with Fox Sports with Speak for Yourself, and then now with Outkick. Which I got to say, I've been reading Outkick for a long time now. My first question for you, first of all, thanks for getting some time to come on with me here. My first question would be for you. You know, what made you decide to give it a shot with Outkick and instead of continuing with Speak for Yourself?
I just wanted the complete and total freedom to say what I want and to be as honest as I want to be. And not that there was anybody objecting to what I was doing at Fox Sports, but, I mean, there's just certain things you can't say when you're that tied to, corporate media outlets. And so that was one part of it. And then the second part was just, if you look around at who's actually having tremendous success, who gets to be their authentic self, it's the guys like Joe Rogan or Dave Portnoy or Bill Simmons that have built their own platform. And so I wanted to partner with Clay and try to build Outkick into a major sports media outlet where I had the freedom and everybody on the site had the freedom to be as honest as they want to be and as outspoken and stick to their values and not worry about whether Twitter or social media agreed with your take. And so I think for the freedom and the financial reward, it just made sense for me to partner with Clay Travis at Outkick.
Yeah, you guys have been obviously knocking it out of the park with all the content. I think too your articles have been fantastic since you've gotten there. To you, and you mentioned a bunch of other names there that have done a good job of also creating their own media super worlds, basically. But what to you makes Outkick different really than anywhere else? Because there's people that listen to this probably are hearing about Outkick for the first time. To them and to everyone else, tell everybody what makes Outkick the one spot for everything sports and even more than that.
Well, I just think in this current era, our content will strike people as fearless because it's just more honest, I think, than you can get in most mainstream media outlets. And it sticks to the values that are traditional in sports. And I think that a lot of the sports media has gone to this social justice warrior move and this very far left-wing point of view and the demonizing everybody that's not on board with Black Lives Matters or whatever is the cause celeb over social media and Twitter. I think most media outlets are addicted to social media and afraid of Twitter lynch mobs, and we're just not at Outkick. I just think it's going to be just a more honest presentation of the news and a more honest, down the middle of the road take on whatever's going on in the sports world.
Jason Whitlock with Outkick.com joining me right now on the Robert Allen and Friends show with Patrick Wheeler. How did you? I got to switch you to an actual sports question here. How do you feel about the lack of response that has not been there, obviously, to this whole Deshaun Jackson anti-Semitic post mess?
I think I'll answer it this way. I like the way that Julian Edelman handled it and offered Deshaun an opportunity to learn from each other. And I think that's the appropriate way to handle it. I think that Deshaun Jackson's comments clearly were out of bounds and uninformed and stupid. And, I understand why people in the Jewish community and people that are just pro-fairness would be upset. But I'm someone that wants to see all these athletes and everybody given the chance to recover from their mistakes. I think that some people have a right to be upset at the hypocrisy of just there wasn't as much backlash to what Deshaun Jackson did as the over-the-top backlash to Drew Brees saying he disagrees with anybody that kneels during the national anthem.
Sure.
A very, harmless comment, an opinion he has a right to, a comment that doesn't expose him as racist in any fashion. But the whole NFL shouted him down and forced him to apologize. And it's crickets, basically, with the Deshaun Jackson comments. That exposes the kind of hypocrisy we have going on in the sports world right now. And to me, if you go to Outkick, you can see why we're different than everybody else. We covered those issues, I think, in a more fair and just way than pretty much everybody else in the sports media.
With the NFL this year, we all know what happened with the ratings when the kneeling and protesting all that started back in 2016. Do you see ratings going down again this season with all the new political protests in place, including the Black National Anthem being played in the first week, all of that stuff? How do you see ratings rebounding with that?
Well, I think they were already going to be in a tough spot just because of the corona pandemic, which I think maybe could have worked in their favor, actually, in terms of TV ratings, people at home with nothing to do. But I certainly think even if somehow they don't kneel during the national anthem and they back off of all this, I think there's already been a lot of damage done to the NFL just this offseason. And just these discussions and the thought of having two different national anthems. If they go ahead and have the two different national anthems, and if most of the players are standing during the Black national anthem, and then most of the players and coaches take a knee during the actual national anthem, I think you could see 30-40% of the NFL audience just disappear. And that it'll be a jump the shark moment that I'm not sure the NFL will ever recover from.
Yeah, that's an extremely significant number. Jason Whitlock joining me here on AAA Sports Radio Network. For Outkick, what is your guys, everyone there, the ultimate goal? I mean, you guys, how big do you really think that Outkick could become with all, like you said, all the other media outlets out there kind of the same in a way? How big do you think Outkick could become before it's all said and done?
Well, I think the sky's the limit. I really do. I think that we could become the place for sports fans and rival anybody in that space. I just look at what Barstool Sports has done with its podcast network. Their podcast network dwarfs ESPN's podcast network. We're going to build a podcast network at Outkick. Don't know if we'll challenge Barstool or ESPN, but we're certainly going to try. And I think as it relates to written content and people just looking for some sanity and not wanting a finger wagged at them and told that, they're racist scum, I think anybody that's tired of that will find us a welcome outlet. And I think for black sports fans who are, for fairness and just want a more objective, honest take, I think they're going to love us as well. And so, we think we're going to be able to challenge any and everybody over time as we build this thing out.
And I think I already know how you feel about this, but I got to ask anyways. With not just the NFL, but politics and sports in general has been a topic for a long time now. Ultimately, in the future, depending on how all this plays out, is it good or bad for sports to embrace politics?
It's terrible. I mean, it's just the wrong thing. These guys are out over their skis, as you can see with Deshaun Jackson, Steven Jackson, and LeBron James, just across the board. They're just out over their skis. There's nothing wrong with being the best athlete you can be and then trying to become more politically, socially active when you have the actual time to devote attention to those issues. I just think and look, I'm not a shut up and dribble guy. I'm more of a shut up and talk about what you actually know guy. And I just don't think a lot of these guys know what they're talking about. I think they're pandering to social media and Twitter rewards race baiting and divisiveness, and they're just giving into that. And so, they need to leave politics out of sports. Their business model has been built on that. They're disrupting their business model, and I guess they think they're going to replace it. These fans that they run off with a different sort of fans, I think they're going to learn a very tough lesson. I think all of sports is being damaged by this. But, I don't know if you can put the toothpaste back in the bottle.
Jason Whitlock here on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Do you, in your opinion, see for sure, let's say, forget all the other sports for now, NFL, do you see them having a season this year and starting on time?
I don't see them starting on time. I do expect them to have some sort of season, although I would not be shocked if the season is delayed, not just 1 month, but maybe 2 or 3 months. But I do expect them to have some sort of season. There's just too much money riding on it. Television needs the programming, the content. Live sports are the only things that draw huge ratings. I expect some sort of season, but I expect it to be delayed.
Last thing here for you, regarding Outkick and yourself with having all that TV experience and everything else, when you mentioned the podcast network you guys are going to try to grow, are you going to be a part of having, for instance, your own podcast or any more like audio video from you as well?
Yeah, I think that I'm going to move to Nashville here at the end of this month, and once I get there, we're going to start podcasting in the middle of August, and there'll be a video component to the podcast. So we want to be active in all those spaces.
Well, listen, if you like what you heard from Jason Whitlock, you should consider becoming an Outkick VIP. It's just $99 a year. You get exclusive access to Clay Travis's national radio show and the events Clay and Jason will sponsor. Outkick.com, as he said, is the fearless and authentic voice of sports fans nationwide. Listen, I'm a VIP myself, and it's been one of the best sports decisions I've made in a long time regarding content and everything else that comes from it. Check out Outkick. Jason, I appreciate it. Thanks for the time, man, and stay safe out there.
All right, thank you.
All right, Jason Whitlock joining me here on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. He's fantastic. He really is. I definitely recommend, like I said, and I would not recommend anything that I haven't done myself, and that includes signing up for that VIP, which is really, really fantastic. And you can go and check out the Outkick website, which, this is something that I followed for years before even getting here. It has, and when they say that it's grown, I mean, it has grown. You will, and you can mark my words now, in a year's time, maybe even less than that, you will hear about Outkick, because they are the next media mogul rising. That's for sure. And I definitely recommend checking it out. Clay Travis is the founder. Again, he's on our station occasionally. We play the I think he's in the time slot that right now this show is on when we don't have our programming going on. So definitely check it out if you want a new perspective on the sports world. Can't thank Jason enough. That was awesome. He did a great job. And I thought it was interesting, kind of what he said there. And just from a business standpoint, which is one of the ways I think that he likes to look at things, and we like to look at things, at least I do, when it comes to sports, is, and I was talking about this with a friend yesterday, politics, and it's it's fine because you want your guys to have their own views and be able to say what they want, do what they want. But at the same time, from a business standpoint, it's never been good for sports. And that's what Jason just said. You know, and it's kind of what we've talked about too, trying to balance it out this year with the not having sports for a long time. Maybe that doesn't, it doesn't affect ratings as much as it would in a normal season. But at the same time, man, there's just really, it's not the place for it. You go on social media and then you allow, your guys can say whatever they want. They can make sure they're heard everywhere else. Their platforms are huge, but when it mixes in with sports in such a prominent way, which is what it's doing and about to do, it's just like Jason said, down the line, it's just not a positive for the sports world. I told the guy I was talking to yesterday, I said, you know what? When I turn on a sporting event, I'm not looking for a political statement. I'm not looking to be told who to vote for or who my favorite athlete plans on voting for. I don't care. I don't care what my favorite team has to say. I just want to see sports. I care about touchdowns in the NFL, care about the home runs in Major League Baseball. And there will always be those people. That's such a simplistic mind view. What are you talking about? No, it's not. It's sports, man. Sports has been that way forever. Believe it or not, there's still some people that believe it that way. And sometimes you got to do a little searching to find it. And I think that's why Outkick is going to explode. They already are, but I definitely recommend checking it out. Jason, if you ever watch Fox Sports and was on Speak for Yourself, he was on there, and I think that he basically started up that show with Marcellus Wiley, and he has been I call him media superstar. That's definitely what he is, so I can't thank him enough for coming on and giving us some time. I know he's a very busy man with everything going on. So we took our early break here. We'll have a chance to talk for a little bit. I said I would get into the Big Ten stuff. This is a mess. The Big Ten decision is a mess. Bottom line. I think, first of all, again, it's a huge overreaction. We're sitting here on July 10th, and we're making a decision already to have a conference-only schedule. It goes back to everybody having an overreaction at this time, in the place we are in this world. Well, I'm not saying it's not easy to, but when decisions are as big as this, and they affect as many people as this, and the money that it affects, I think it's a little early. I mean, things with the virus and everything, they're changing on a daily basis. Why are we making decisions 2 months in advance for this ever-fluid situation? It is consistently changing. I gave out that stat yesterday of the data regarding coronavirus deaths and pneumonia deaths. Almost 2 times as many pneumonia deaths this year for people kids ages 15 to 24. I mean, and that's the thing too. I love when I see this news with Oklahoma. Okay, Oklahoma gives out their latest positive test news regarding the coronavirus. Tested their latest round of football players. Remember, they had 14 when they came back. They were testing positive. Well, as of 2 days ago, they tested 89 more players. Again, no positive test results. On the first, when they got the first round of testing completed, got the results, they had 12 active cases. They're down to 9 active cases in a week. So 3 of these guys actually took them a week or less to test negative. So, and that's my thing. My first response when I saw what the Big Ten did, and I've seen it everywhere on social media too. Oh, so the virus is just not an issue amongst conference teams, I guess. I mean, that's one way to look at it. They're going to say, well, we feel like it's going to cut down on a lot of travel. It's going to cut down on the possibility of spreading the virus. That's going to be the excuses that we're going to get, okay, everywhere. And the thing, too, is that some of these games that are end up being canceled now, they're not even that big of a travel issue. You get the occasional in-state game, or close enough to where it can be traveling on a bus. You don't even got to get on a plane. So the big question around here now is, because there were rumors and reportedly, again, that the Pac-12 is thinking about doing the same thing and going to a conference-only schedule, which obviously would mean Oregon State would not be able to come down to Stillwater. So what does Stillwater do? Here in Oklahoma State, what do we do? I think that what a lot of people like to float out there, and it's interesting to think about, okay, because it can happen. Should OSU go grab Alabama if Alabama can't play that first week against USC, which is looking like a possibility? And I'm curious. I want to know what you guys think. Phone lines are open, 533-1020, 533-1051. Would that make sense? There's been arguments for and against it. And again, it's just a throw. It's just a throw out there. Would Alabama even want to do it? But it is interesting to think about. The chips could fall in the right place where it would be a possibility. Talk about a heck of a home opener. Or a heck of a game wherever it's going to be played. Season opener, I should say. Whew. OSU Alabama to start the season? Okay, I'm down. The thing that I have an issue with is I truly believe that not only is this an overreaction with the Big Ten, but there's some problems with administration. What I mean by that is I believe there is an actual fear amongst administration in the Big Ten that if they didn't make some sort of move like this, they fear they would be ripped to shreds by social media, by media members in general, by everybody. Because I actually am curious, do you think that would happen? I mean, really think about it. If the Big Ten had not said anything and said we're going to have a normal football season, based on a lot of things that we've seen in the media and read, in sports media too, what would be the first reaction? Oh my gosh, the Big Ten doesn't care. They're insensitive. They don't care about their players, the health of anybody. They're just going to have a normal football season like nothing happens. That would be the headlines. I think that it doesn't play completely like all of it, but it does have something to do with it. I do believe that to be true. Because how else are you justifying this early of a decision? You really can't. I said it yesterday. We've never shut down a football season, and we've never stopped games from happening because there's pneumonia out there or because some guys have the flu. And yet, before we even think about starting a season, we already got to cut games for a virus that rarely affects young people. And I get there's more than young people on these teams. There are elderly coaches. There are elderly referees. Look, there's going to be testing done. These guys are going to be, everybody is going to be checked out. They're in good hands. And I think part of the issue of it too is, which I've said a bunch, we just can't, it's not feasible. We just can't make sure and keep all these football players in one spot. That's the problem. Because I think we would have a pretty solid chance of keeping infection rates down if football players were able to stay in one spot. We've said that over and over. But it's just not going to happen. They're students too. And if campuses are going to be open, they're going to be students. So you can't necessarily just keep them where you want. You can't think that, well, if that happens, maybe we can, keep them away from the public. I'm sorry, but it's just not going to happen that way. Seen a lot of people just immediately go, well, this is the first block, first domino is falling. The rest of the season's on its way down. Here's my thing: when we talk about the Big 12 and the SEC, I specifically came out earlier in the year talking about football coming back, and I said the SEC for sure, and the Big 12 probably will have a chance here to step up and say, we're going to play football. And they did. And cautiously and eventually the Pac-12 followed, the Big Ten followed, the ACC followed. But people looked at the SEC and the Big 12 to lead the way, and they did. They have a chance here to do it again. They have a big chance here to do it again. They have a chance to step up and say, we're the SEC. We're the Big 12. We're going to have a normal fall sports schedule. Or we're going to have a normal football season at least. What that means is we're learning to live with this thing. We're looking at the data. And our administration is not afraid to stand up and make a decision based off of that data. Because what data is the Big Ten basing this off of? Or are they even basing off of data? I think they're just making this premature judgment. I'm the only one that thinks that. Bob Bowlesby, commissioner of the Big 12, said the same thing. The initial question was, hey, are you going to do only a non-conference or no non-conference this year? And his immediate answer, have you decided that? No, they haven't decided. They haven't even thought about it really yet. They're not going to do that. Why? Because it's premature. They don't want to make rash decisions. That's why I heard yesterday, as soon as the Big Ten dropped that news, the immediate response was, oh my gosh, the SEC and the Big 12 is going to follow. I saw that everywhere. I don't think that's the case. The SEC and the Big 12 can run it if they want. And they have a chance to do that. May mean they have to play each other a little bit more. But who wouldn't want to see that? I think everybody would be okay with that. They have a chance to make a real statement here. Again, they do. On top of all that, College Football Playoff Committee said they are not planning on changing their process, even with everything going on. That's important. I mean, I think that's one step forward. But that tells you, too, that if all this continues to happen, the Pac-12 says no, Oklahoma State all of a sudden has to schedule an SEC school or whatever during that first week, then it's like, oh boy, we better be ready to go week one. A lot more than we planned on against Oregon State. We all know how many losses you can get away with and try to make the college football playoff in the NCAA. Very few. That's why when we talk about the whole prospect of an Alabama coming in or going there, there's probably good and bad. The good would be this is not the same Alabama team, I don't think, that they have had in quite a while. Who's going to be quarterback? How solid is their running back situation? Henry Ruggs is gone. So maybe you catch them on an off night, but at the same time, they're still Alabama. Still got Nick Saban. Oh, and they still have a fantastic defense. So the possible good is that if you were to play Alabama and beat them in week one, you know how many eyes are immediately on Oklahoma State as a real contender all of a sudden? Wow, these guys weren't playing in the offseason. Wow, remember all that stuff that happened in the offseason? Well, they must be over it. Could you imagine the shift that it would force media to take if that happened? Imagine if Oklahoma State came in, played Alabama week one, beat them, what the media would have to do. They'd say, oh my gosh, things must be okay with Chuba and Mike Gundy. Wow. You know how well that would play out for Mike Gundy? Not just from a winning standpoint, but from on a personal level and a public level. He would look like a genius. Wow, that guy's changed. He's done a lot this offseason. He really took everything serious, and not only that, he got his team ready to go, and they beat Alabama. Man, that would be a serious turnaround to everything that happened this offseason. So there's your good. The bad would be, as we all know, like I just said, it's still Alabama. And if you had to go there and play, never easy. Not saying Oklahoma State couldn't get it done, but never easy. And if you had that opening loss yeah, you're going to get people that say, well, it was Alabama, but at the same time, how many more losses could you take and try to get in that college football playoff? Or be ready to go in the Big 12? I mean, it'd be interesting. So again, just a funny scenario to throw out there. Not saying it's happening, but it is 2020. Anything could happen on a moment's notice, as we've all seen, especially in the sports world. I mean, here we go again. Seeing a couple people compare this to back when, just like Steve was talking on his show, back when everything started getting canceled in sports. NCAA tournament, conference tournaments, all that. It does have a very weird, eerie feeling, very similar to that, doesn't it? It's like, oh boy. First it's non-conference games, then what? Season? It was just like the SEC said at the start of all this. The Pac, that's what Greg Sankey basically said. He said, hey, Larry Scott and the Pac-12, they can do whatever they want. It doesn't bother us. We're going to play football. Bob Bowlesby basically said the same thing. Look, we're going to play football in the Big 12. Don't care what the Pac-12 does. Well, now they have the same opportunity to say that about the Big 10 and the ACC and maybe the Pac-12 again. Well, we don't care what they do. And in this situation, in an unprecedented time like this, people say, well, I thought the Power 5 was supposed to stick together. Don't they always promote Power 5, always together on everything? Not so fast. Not in this situation. In a time like this, where it's become drastic enough to some schools and some conferences that they have to actually think about not playing football. Think about the revenue that wouldn't come in with it and actually act on it. Well, you're going to have some division, I think, in the Power 5. All of a sudden, it's the Power 2. And I hope that the Big 12 teams up with the SEC in this situation. I don't want to see the SEC be the only one that said, because we all know they run football. Sorry, but they do. It's not a surprise. It's not a shock. I didn't just give a hot take. But if they said, look, we're going to play, I hope, and we're going to play normal, I hope the Big 12 jumps on with it. Or heck, let the Big 12 be the first to come out and say it. Bob Bowlesby can make a real statement here. I think he did yesterday with the initial question was, are you guys going to do anything about this? Are you guys going to do away with non-conference? Have you considered that at this time? What was his answer? One little word, but a lot of power behind it. No. No, we are not considering that at this time, and why would you? On July 10th, why would you? When practices are set to start up very soon, why would you? So I give credit to the Big 12 and the SEC for not jumping the gun in this situation where it is becoming a real expected reality for a lot of people to just jump the gun. Whatever happened to sitting back and thinking on things? Because this seems like a very, very, very irrational decision by the Big Ten. Would I be surprised today if the ACC and the Pac-12 comes out and says, well, we're next. Big Ten did it, we better follow. No, not really. Heck, I was surprised to see the Pac-12 ultimately say we're going to play football and try to do it on time. I was actually a little surprised to see Larry Scott have the nerve to say that. But this is next. The Big 12 and the SEC can make people say, wow, they are understanding what's going on. They are understanding how to deal with it. Their protocols that are put in place aren't just words. They're actually going through and utilizing people they have at their disposal, tools they have at their disposal, medical attention they have at their disposal, and making things happen. Because guess what? We've learned to live with a lot of other things. Well, learning to live with the coronavirus is next. And 2 giant Power 5 conferences have a chance to show that to the world. And I hope they do. Coming up next, Oklahoma State basketball was able to jump into their NBA combine training. Some really impressive numbers across the board, but Montreal Pena, wow, he showed out. I'll tell you what those numbers were later on in the show. TCL still going on. Yeah, we still got live sports. TCL said we're going to play baseball, and they're doing it. Cade Cabanis had a night last night. He has had a fantastic season with the TCL. Cale Davis was a big part of the win last night, too. Talk about all that and much more to come here on the Robert Allen and Friends Show with Patrick Wheeler on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Welcome back to the Robert Allen and Friends Show, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. 1020 AM, 1580 AM, 93.1 FM, 105.1 FM, Triple Play Sports Radio app, 93.3 as well. Hey, this is also important for all you Stillwater folks out there. In case you haven't heard, Stillwater has officially adopted a face covering ordinance. What does that mean? Well, you got to wear a mask in public. That'll start this Saturday, so tomorrow. It extends through November 30th. So, I guess just get used to it if you want to be out in public. That's that's a pretty solid time. I think when I think about it with what that means for if fans will be allowed at OSU games, which still thinking they will, will you have to wear one there? I think probably so. I think that Oklahoma State's probably going to have to adhere to the city. There are some exceptions. Obviously, if you are unable to wear one due to an illness, for instance, or mental illness, I think is what else was put in there. You don't have to. And on top of that, children under 5 don't have to. You at a restaurant when you're seated while you're eating, you don't have to. What else? If you're at a dental office, you don't have to wear one. While you're alone in your vehicle or your office or your private space, you don't have to wear one. That's the thing that gets me. When I'm driving around and I see people by themselves wearing a mask in their vehicle, I'm like, what are you doing? Like, okay, I guess it goes, I'm going to stop there. Persons exercising in communal outdoor spaces or persons walking or exercising with other persons from the same household in communal outdoor spaces. Don't have to wear one, but please distance. Private homes, obviously, no mask needed, and non-public areas of offices or workplace where physical distancing is possible. That's interesting right there, actually, because, well, this says that schools pursuant to adopted policies. Oklahoma State's already doing that, too. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. If you haven't been wearing a mask, get used to it if you're living in Stillwater. That's all I got to say. OSU basketball in the NBA combine training. This kind of grabbed my attention just because of some of the numbers. Let me just say this in case anybody didn't know. This is an extremely athletic team. Extremely athletic, even for the youth. Montreal Pena is 6'10", and his standing reach just under 9 feet. That would be impressive to do at any point. His max vertical leap was at 42.5 inches. People are like, well, is that impressive? Yeah. That is the best number. No one has recorded a leap of that number or better at the combine since those records were available starting in 2000. So 20 years now, and he's at the top. That dude can get up. He's going to be a big-time rebounder. He's going to be able to rise above defenders. I can't wait. We haven't talked a lot about him, but he's going to be another fun one to watch. This team, people on the outside in will say, well, they got Cade Cunningham. That'll be fun to watch. Yeah, but let's look at some of these other guys. Man, we're going to have a lot of studs on this team. Isaac Likely jumped 41.5 inches. Avery Anderson got it to 40 inches exactly, so 3 guys in the 40-inch club there. Pena he set it a 7-foot wingspan. Caleb Boone was the only one that beat him, had a 7'2 wingspan. I guess Cade Cunningham did as well, but that's what's crazy. Your point guard Dude's reaching out 7'2". The length is crazy. Sitting at 6'8" in shoes is what he clocked out at. Cade Cunningham. So, and the shoes were only 10.5 inches. So you've got him around that height. I mean, that is an impressive height at point guard position. I think we saw it exemplified in the NBA more than anything when we saw Giannis Antetokounmpo being a point guard at his height and length. You know, it's like, and I think we maybe even saw way back when Scottie Pippen also was kind of around that size for his position. He played some guard. I think that new style of guard is going to be successful in the NBA and in college basketball. Like, so many people, when they think point guard, well, what do we think of? Small dude that can dribble, get in between defenders, pop it from outside maybe. Well, it's changing. I'm telling you, that's what's next. OSU is exemplifying that with the length. I love it. They're going to be a long team. They're going to be athletic. They're going to get down the court in a hurry. They're going to score in a hurry. So not only are you going to get to watch Cade, but we're talking about a team that is going to be explosive. Not saying we're not going to see offensive sets run, but man, we're going to see a lot of transition buckets. Truly believe that. And that's fun basketball. On the defensive end, it's Mike Boyden. Expect them to be what they be. Okay? Defense is preached all the time. We're going to take our final break of the hour. When we come back, the TCL, as I talked about, Kate Cabinets had a really, really good night. Later on in the show, no more guest book today. Got Jason Whitlock in there to start off. He pretty much dominates the guest line for today. As he talked about, which I don't think I got to yesterday, Julian Edelman had a fantastic response to Deshaun Jackson's crazy ignorant posts the other day. We'll talk about that. The NFL, their rules for some of the coronavirus stuff has just been like, okay, seriously? We're really going to do that now? I'll tell you which one of those is just mind-boggling. Mind-bogglingly, how do you say that? Dumb. And on top of that, I think it was pretty interesting. Jason Whitlock, I did not expect him. I asked him, I said, what do you think about the NFL season? Said, I don't see it starting on time, but I see them having a season. Pretty interesting. I did not think that would be the answer, honestly. So we'll talk about all that. Also, I got some beef to get to. When a list was put out of the top running backs in the NFL for this season, I got an issue. Hour number 2 coming up. If you have questions, comments, call in 533-1020, 533-1051. We can talk what the heck's going on with the Big Ten. Will the Big 12 be impacted? Will Oklahoma State be impacted? You can go to my social media, send me a message if you want it answered. Facebook, Patrick Wheeler. Twitter at @ThePattyWheels. Find us on Twitter as well. And Facebook with Triple Play Sports Radio. We can get answers to your questions there. Triple Play Radio at Triple Play Radio on Twitter. Triple Play Sports Radio on Facebook. Back after this with hour number 2 of the Robert Allen and Friends Show with Patrick Wheeler next. Welcome into hour number 2 of the Robert Allen and Friends Show, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler with you all, filling in for Robert. Rainy day here in Stillwater. Storming as we speak. Stay safe out there. Wherever you may be, listening in a ton of different ways. 1020 AM, 1580 AM, 93.1 FM, 93.3 FM, 105.1 FM, and the Triple Play Sports Radio app. Raining everywhere, apparently, because the Workday Charity Open is now being suspended. At the time, there are 7 former Oklahoma State golfers in this tournament. Ricky Fowler sitting at the best score for those Oklahoma State former players at -2 right now. The lead is up to -11. So, a ways to go for pretty much everybody else. Charles Howell at +1, Matthew Wolf at +5, Bo Van Pelt at +7. Victor Hovland, Gooch, and Tway have not teed off yet today. So, yeah, it's not necessarily going great for those guys, but there's some golf for you. At least it was happening. Hopefully that can resume. Sports is at a lull in a lot of places still. when one of the headlines on ESPN earlier was betting has now been taken off the table for I can't remember the name of it now. It's like Ukrainian, Slovakian, whatever it was, table tennis. I thought, oh boy, we got to have something else. We got to get something else going. Well, there was sports last night. I'm curious if you have been to a TCL game so far since they launched it. Feel free to call in. Let me know how it went. Did you like it? Did you think the competition was good? What did you think about the regulations with the coronavirus? Because I had a pretty good time when I went. They played last night. Wrapped up a series against Amarillo, the Sod Dogs. They called themselves the Sod Squad. And Cade Cabanis only had one hit, but it was the hit of the night. It was a grand slam in the 5th inning. They won 11-2, wrap up that series. He has 8 RBIs now through 9 games, and that leads the team. Oh, he's out there not really missing a beat when it comes to swinging it. Cale Davis got the nod last night and went 4 2/3 innings, allowed a run, 4 hits, 3 Ks. Pitching has been pretty fantastic for Oklahoma State representation, too, with the TCL. So, as I said, the Drillers, they're 6-3. That's tied for first in the North with Amarillo. I'll give credit. These guys jumped out and started playing and really got after it pretty quickly. And I'm not just hyping it up because it's Oklahoma State. No, it was really good competition. I mean, it was fun baseball to watch. If you haven't checked them out in Tulsa, feel free to do that. And I encourage it if you want to see some live sports and some good competition. I believe they go on now to play in a series of Victoria. That's a bit of a jaunt from Tulsa, their second road trip of the season. They'll be out on the road, I think, starting tomorrow, the weekend series. Maybe tonight. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, yeah. So definitely check it out. It's definitely worth it. I know a guy called in one time and asked, can you watch it? Yes, you can watch the games. They are streamed. You can go to the Tulsa Drillers website. However, you do have to pay for it. It's like a subscription service. So you will have to shell out a little bit of money if you want to watch it, but you definitely can. It's possible. A lot of fun there at One Oak. Here's the other thing I got to say with regards to college football. It would just shock me to see anybody else really come forward with. I'm talking anybody else besides the 3 conferences that sound like they're going to do it for sure. Anybody else within the Big 12 and the SEC to say we can't figure out a way to get it done. Because I see yesterday too, there's actually talks now of no high school football being played in Texas, of all states. The high school football mecca of the world. And we might not have that happen. And what, again, I'm like, what is the reasoning? Like, if somebody can come in and explain to me what the reasoning behind all this really is, why we got to not have sports or have kids back in school, I'm all ears. Because I promise you, I've looked at this data over and over and over. I got to go on my social media half the time and straighten out people that just say dumb things like we can't go back to school. Kids can't go back to school. I know because I've looked at the data. What data have you been looking at? We got to get back. My favorite study done so far is the 67,000 pediatricians that have come out and said, this kid's got to be back in school. And the crazy part about it is this is being ignored. Like, how many of you have actually seen that story? It should be front page news. But it's not. Anybody actually think of Texas not having a high school football season? I mean, really. That makes 0 sense. Make sure today's got an update that you stay on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network in the afternoon. With the show I usually do, Carson Teal and Trey Cobb are going to join Jason Elmquist in the afternoon sports drive. one on each hour there from 3 to 5, so you'll get a lot of perspective there. Baseball, that's something we're going to have to get to here before too long as well. I had Tom Ackerman on yesterday from St. Louis, kind of gave us an update on what's going on with baseball, Major League Baseball. They plan on starting in what now? 14 days. 13 days. 13 days until we see Major League Baseball. I might cry on the mic. Wow. Cannot wait. Okay, we got to get in a little bit more to this. I didn't get to talk about it yesterday as much as I wanted to. But if you remember, it was Wednesday now? Wednesday, when I opened the show, my first cover of Robert's show, and I lit in and buried and stuck in a grave the response from the NFL and its players to Deshaun Jackson posting anti-Semitic posts on Instagram. And still to this day, there has been such a minimal response from players, and my disappointment is through the roof. But one response, finally somebody said something. And I got to give credit to my guy, because I have been a Julian Edelman fan from the start. Growing up a Chiefs fan, people were always like, Patrick, you can't don't support the Patriots, man. Come on. Or let's just say this. Growing up a football fan of anybody but the Patriots, you know, it's like, why would you support the Patriots? Why would you ever talk that they cheat? They're the Patriots. Look, I've always supported success, okay? I've always respected it, too, consistently. And sorry if you don't want to hear it, but that's what the Patriots have done for a long time. Julian Edelman has been one of my favorite receivers to ever play the game. I think he's wildly underrated just because he doesn't score a ton of touchdowns. But if you were to go to a young kid, say, so you want to be a slot receiver, you make him sit in front of a TV and watch hours of Julian Edelman film on how to do it clinically. He's a beast. His response to Deshaun Jackson's ignorant, stupid, dumb, uneducated posts was perfect. Put it on his Instagram and said, you know what? I took a little bit of time here to think about what I wanted to say. And his response was, here's what I want to do for Deshaun. I want to take Deshaun, because Julian Edelman is Jewish. Says I want to take Deshaun to the National Holocaust Museum, right, in Washington, D.C. Show him around. Let him see if I can educate him a little bit. And then after that, I want Deshaun to take me to the National African American History Museum and educate myself a little bit more. Whoever would have thought that would be the response? He wants to have a conversation. He said that afterwards. How about afterwards? You know, we get some burgers, we sit down and we talk about it. Isn't that nuts that in today's world, that's big news right there, that somebody actually wants to sit down and talk about differences? But it is. Julian Edelman realizes, hey, I'm an adult man. Deshaun Jackson is an adult man. He may be stupid, but he's an adult man. Why not, instead of coming out and then, you know, saying maybe he doesn't know what all he's talking about, how about we sit down and talk about it? But to me, and it's just like Jason Whitlock said to start off the show, well, I didn't see anybody say that about Drew Brees. Hey, Drew, how about we sit down and talk about why you disagree with kneeling for the national anthem? Never saw anybody say that. And that was my response to it, was, why didn't we? The only one I ever saw, now that I think back on it, was Tony Dungy. And it wasn't popular, but he came out and said, you know, our initial response should have been, hey, let's sit down and talk about why you feel that way, why I feel this way. Let's hash it out amongst ourselves and move on. Because how it used to be, I know a lot of you remember, back in those days, you could have a conversation and not be ridiculed for it. So I give a ton of credit to Julian Edelman for being mature, being willing to stand up, and say the right thing. It was perfect. The response was perfect. And Julian Edelman, he's done some dumb things in the past. We know the PED situation. I mean, this past offseason, he was drunk banging on a car, got arrested. But he's a smart dude. I mean, that right there, that's a smart response. The other issue I have with it, Steven Jackson. Not the former Rams running back, Falcons running back. Steven Jackson, the former NBA player in the Malice in the Palace. That's what he's best known for. Has a job with ESPN. His initial response, okay, first of all, he destroyed Drew Brees. Ripped Drew Brees constantly. Said he doesn't know what he's talking about. He's ignorant on social media. Then to Deshaun Jackson's post, he said, well, Deshaun didn't mean that. And some people were like, well, what are you talking about? Yeah, he did. He posted it. Went on CNN. His next response was, doubled down on it and said, look, I should have handled this a little better, but don't mistake for what Deshaun posted as anti-Semitism. What? He doubled down on it. So that's the thing, too, is that we had a chance for the NFL. So many players had a shot to show that they truly believe in equality for everybody, and they didn't. Steven Jackson is a phony. And why can't I, believe that about other guys like Michael Thomas, who decided to tear into Drew Brees viciously, and it was silent. Just like Jason Whitlock said, it was crickets when Deshaun Jackson was openly anti-Semitic. And don't feed me this, oh, he didn't know what he was talking about. He was just so uneducated that he didn't realize how bad it was. Are you kidding me? Go look at the post for yourself. Anybody with a functioning brain could realize that it's anti-Semitic. Anybody with a functioning brain could realize that it is against Jews, against Jewish people. and silence. Silence speaks loud sometimes. It really did in this situation. It really did. Later on in the show, this is also pretty interesting. We've talked about it. We kept up with a lot with it on the afternoon sports drive. Zion Williamson has left Duke University a serious issue. It originally was thought to be, well, maybe it's not that big of a deal. Well, more news broke out today. For Duke. Talk about that later on in the show. This list of running backs is nuts. On top of that, the NFL, with some of the rules they're throwing out there, what you can and can't do this season, might be almost as ridiculous as what Major League Baseball is doing. Because it's bad. It's bad. That's what I said I thought was interesting to Tom Ackerman yesterday. I said, hey, how do you think it's going to be governed and policed in Major League Baseball? Will there be really any repercussions if a guy's spitting sunflower seeds or if he licks his fingers? Will they be watching him like hawks? He said, I think the players will do most of the governing themselves. That's maybe a good point, actually. Just like he said when the Cardinals did, Adam Wainwright got all the young kids together and said, look, we are going to hold you accountable. If you are not following these rules and get us in trouble as a team, we're going to hold you accountable for it. Never thought of it that way. Hope Jason talks to Carson and about that today. And I hope he gets the chance to ask him, hey, look, if you do that, are your teammates going to rip you? Dude, you just licked your fingers. Don't do that. Oh my gosh, are those sunflower seeds? Sorry, it sounds ridiculous, but it is. But it is kind of interesting. We are 13 days away from real Major League Baseball. Who the heck is going to win the divisions? Who the heck is going to get into the World Series? Should it really count? Should we put an asterisk next to that? think it's definitely possible. 60 games is not a real season, but you know what? We're taking it with how we get it. There are going to be plenty of people right now that are so starved for sports that they are willing to watch just about anything. Major League Baseball is gonna benefit. You can tie all this back to college sports as well. Think about it. If the college season doesn't happen in college football, who's going to benefit the most? The NFL. They will absolutely dominate. They'll take over Saturdays. Saturdays belong to college football. It's been that way forever. Well, the NFL will absolutely take it over. I mean, what's next for the Big Ten? Do they come out and they say, you know what? Just not going to have a season. And then what if someone questions it? Well, why? Well, it's just not safe. I love to throw out to people who say that football isn't safe. Injuries happen. Concussions happen and have long-lasting effects. Yep, players go out there all the time. Don't hear a word about it. So don't tell me that we can't play because it's just not safe. Oh, boy. Spare me on that one. Spare me on that one. Again, if you hadn't heard, the Big Ten officially announcing they will move to a conference-only schedule for all fall sports, including football. I'm still expecting, yes, unfortunately, the ACC and the Pac-12 to do something about it as well today. That was the reported news yesterday. It's probably going to happen. If not today, sometime this weekend. So Oklahoma State's going to be looking for another opponent, most likely. I mean, we talked about it a ton. It was like, is Oregon State, are they going to be able to come down to Stillwater? We've talked about that for months. Will they be able to? Well, why wouldn't they be able to? The last talk to Oregon State was, yeah, we plan on coming and we plan on winning, apparently. What are they thinking now? The money that's going to be lost out for some of these teams is unbelievable. Art Haynes the other day talking about Missouri State, what would happen if they didn't play Oklahoma. What was it, like $800,000 or something like that? Or more? Think schools like that can just absorb those hits? I got news for you, they can't. This is a big issue. It's a start to a bigger issue. And we're going to see which conferences have the backbone, if any. I really have a lot of confidence, and I hope I'm not let down by Bob Bowlesby. I hope I'm not let down by Greg Sankey. They probably are the only two voices that a lot of people really even care about in college football, but also had the most impact. For instance, could you imagine if the SEC came out yesterday instead of the Big Ten and said, we're doing conference only? What do you think would happen? The Big Ten would have followed, Pac-12 would have followed, ACC would have followed, Big 12 would have followed. Everywhere would have followed. The SEC runs the table, but now they have a chance to turn the tables. They can really make something happen here, and I am rooting for them to do the right thing. Rooting for them to look at data. When we come back on the Robert Allen and Friends show, yeah, this rule with the NFL is absolutely one of the dumbest things I've ever heard of. We'll talk about that next. It's Robert Allen and Friends show, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler filling in for Robert this week up until Monday, through Monday. We'll get back on the afternoon sports drive after that. I know Jason and Tom held it down the last couple of days. Did a good job, listened in. Levi Peckinpah joined and did a great job as well yesterday. They actually got a chance to break the news, really, to a lot of people, I think, on the whole Big Ten issue. It's the joys of getting that show at 3 o'clock. Get that last chance to get some breaking news before that. So I always try to get Robert as much news as possible sometimes when when it does break early in the morning, but that doesn't happen that often. Usually waits into the afternoon, so that's probably going to be the case today. As I said, I would probably be, not very shocked if the Pac-12 and the ACC comes out and says we're doing what the Big Ten's doing later this afternoon, though. So the guys in the afternoon sports drive probably have a chance to talk about that. They might have to fill in with Carson Teal and Trey Cobb. They might have to fill in a little football talk there as well, or conference talk in general. I'm sure they can do that. Those guys are versatile. But you want to hear some baseball stuff, make sure you tune into that at 3 o'clock, because they're obviously getting a chance to understand firsthand what the heck's going on. Major League Baseball. I see this tweet right now. I saw it last night, and this is actually a really good point. So, while you guys complain and mourn about football season changing, the possibility of cancellations, remember those of us who work in sports, this is our livelihood on the line. It's from Jacqueline Lawson. I don't know what she does, but how true is that, though? We haven't really talked about that, but think of all the media outlets that devote everything to covering college football, or just sports in general, sports outlets in general. The ramifications of no season, as we all know, don't stop at the gates. And we've talked about the impact it would have on local businesses, but also those that make a living, like that tweet said, within sports. We've been able to sit here and talk as much as we possibly can about will we play, when will we play, what will it look like. And that's been the case all over the country. But can you imagine there's no football season? I mean, people would feel it for years and years and years. And there would be some schools that would probably not recover, okay? Yes, they're still schools, but they probably wouldn't recover. It pays for everything. It allows universities to be universities. Like, that's the point to where how much college football has grown over the years. It has exploded. There would be... Okay, it was an interesting point the other day, caller made. There would be possibility, if you think about it, there would be schools that if all they had was football, they could still survive. If that was the only sport they had, they'd still survive. That's how big of an impact it has on everything. Players, coaches, staff, people in town, people across the country, sports media, go on and on and on. People this would affect. That's why I think, too, you got to weigh some options. If you're the Big Ten, how much were you really weighing everything? Or how early was this decision in the head of those Big Ten ADs and presidents and the commissioner? Well, we contemplated this. We sat down and thought about it. Did they really, though? I mean, really? Did they consistently sit down and consider every option? Was there a ton of contingency plans really in place? Or from the beginning was the idea of not having conference games at the top? It shouldn't have been. That's unfortunate if it was. But I am still just beyond myself with how rash this decision was. How unsupported by data this decision was. We go on and on about that. So make sure you stay tuned to the Triple Play Sports Radio Network today. Hopefully more news coming out about other conferences will appear today. I wouldn't get my hopes up for anything with the Big 12 or the SEC. I think they have plenty of time, as they've basically already said, to discuss more about what's going to happen with them. All right, so the NFL has already put in new rules and guidelines and regulations with the coronavirus. This one is I'm like, okay, did I really just read that? And the players would agree with me based on their reaction. You can have football this year, apparently. You can tackle. You can spit everywhere and yell and fluids are flying. and you can do all that good old stuff with football. But according now to the NFL, you can't swap jerseys after the games. That's become like a big thing, right, recently? Star players swapping jerseys with each other at the end of the games. Well, now you can't do that because you got to social distance and stuff. Wait a second. So you can tackle, you can spit, you can yell, and you can scream, and fluids can fly, and you can be as close to another human being multiple times as possible. But then after the game, you can't trade your jersey with another guy? I think what this points out is how inconsistent. This is perfect because it's not just sports, but everywhere. How inconsistent everything really is with the rules and guidelines regarding this coronavirus stuff. Like, what thinking went into that process? The NFL sat down and said, yeah, this makes sense. Oh, we can have them do whatever they normally do, but they cannot, and I mean cannot, swap jerseys. It's unsafe. And, what was the thought process there? What was the guy that gave the all go? Was that Roger Goodell really thinking, yeah, this makes sense? Some of the guys that sit down and make decisions, especially in these past few months, we've seen true colors of how well decision making can really be. And it's not that well. How informed decision making can be. And it's not very informed. We have seen that all over. If anything, the coronavirus pandemic has exposed a lot of people not knowing what in the world they're talking about or doing. And here's the thing. I get it. This is still a fairly new, to a lot of people, new type of disease, trying to learn everything, still with it, that's changing. But facts and data are real for a reason. So what exactly, if you went up to the NFL, what would they back this up with? Well, it's just not safe. They can play football, that's safe, and they can get in each other's face and do all the good old stuff they usually do, but jersey swap, nah, it's not safe. The inconsistency, the lack of information is always happening. I think, too, what was funny was the response from players. The response from players was like, okay, are you joking me right now? Oh, but by the way, they had plenty to say about this, but nothing to say about Deshaun Jackson, in case anyone's wondering. But they were like, this is like a joke, right? They thought it was like an Onion news release. I did too. We can do this, but you can't do that. How many of you guys have been in situations with the coronavirus so far this year where it's like, yeah, you can do this, and this over here might be relatively the same thing, but you can't do that? That's been one of my biggest issues with all of this. Yeah, that's why I actually look at for instance, now in Stillwater, the mask order. It's like, okay, you have to wear a mask, right, through November, but there's some places you don't have to. But it's like, okay, but you just said you have to, and you named the reasons why, but in these other places you don't. So I think it goes everywhere. I think a lot of people making decisions are trying to do the best they can, but let's be honest, we're seeing it everywhere. A lot of them just don't know what they're talking about or don't know how to back it up. The NFL, as Jason mentioned at the top of the show, they've got a chance to still dominate, and maybe that comes from nobody getting a chance to watch football. It's been a long time. Look, I'm dying for the NFL. I've said this and I made it public. If the NFL was taken away, the NFL season, I don't know what I'd do. I mean, the NCAA tournament was bad enough. That's probably my favorite sporting event of the year. And it being taken away was bad enough. Got through it, fine, whatever. Sucked, but did it. College football, if it was taken away, that would be pretty damn terrible. Would hate it, but I'd get over it. Being the NFL fan that I am, if they lost the NFL season, oh boy, I don't even want to think about it. Speaking of, season tickets are becoming an issue. Buying them is going to become an issue. Crowds everywhere, or teams everywhere are telling season ticket holders, it's not looking good, and that's not good for the NFL. We'll talk a little bit more about that here in a minute. Let's go to the phone lines. You're on the Robert Allen and Friends Show with Patrick Wheeler. Go ahead.
Hey, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. Have you delved into and done a little bit of research of all of the smaller schools that aren't getting allowed to have their big payday from playing Ohio State, Michigan, Clemson, the ones that get paid to come play them?
Yep.
Those paychecks usually float that athletics budget the entire year for many other sports,
Absolutely.
let alone the football.
Sure.
What schools are possibly not going to be able to recover from this just because of so many Power 5 schools canceling non-conference games? What's your take on that?
Well, you look at some of the schools that have that chance at losing these games. I went through and I kind of looked at, for instance, some of the Big Ten games that won't happen. Specifically, it's tough to nail down a lot of schools, but I'm thinking of, and that's the thing. There's plenty of FCS schools that might be able to get away with it, but FBS schools, that's where you're going to have the issue. So, you look at teams like I talked the other day to my guy from Springfield with Missouri State sitting there playing having a chance to play at Oklahoma. If they lost that right there, I'm telling you from firsthand knowledge at Missouri State and Springfield, that is like they're going to have to cut multiple sports. It could come down to because I'm telling you right now, basketball doesn't pay the bills there anymore. And that's just one of those schools where I think off the top of my head, it's like I'm trying to think of how they survive down the road because they are one of those schools that jumped like Oregon State. I mean, think about it too at Oklahoma State. And they might have a better chance of being in the Pac-12. But think about these schools like it comes to mind like a team that Alabama usually plays is Mercer, for instance. How do they survive? That comes to mind.
Yeah.
All those schools, like you can name any small school. I'm talking a pretty small school that gets a chance at these money games. And you look down the road, it's what they would have to pay out to keep some sports going, and on top of that, to keep some academics going. Okay, too. That's why people have said, well, how is it going to affect academics? It's an academic school. When I say that it pays for everything, I mean absolutely everything. It does. It brings in money for you name it. Football is the epicenter of that. So, yeah, there are plenty of small schools you can go down the list and be like, okay, I mean, good luck. First of all, if they didn't have a season, they wouldn't survive, okay? Now, if they didn't have a season at all, they just wouldn't survive. If they take one or two blows at a game like that, maybe you can see them trying to come back from it, but it's going to be, I'm telling you, if they lose games like that, like I just mentioned, it is going to be tough to keep everything normal.
The only way they may be able to make up for it is if TV rights change just for this 1 year, and because everybody's staying at home watching TV, they can possibly up that and distribute that money somewhere rather than going to the games or paying the schools to come play you. The only way that may save that for some of those schools is get some division of TV money if we keep going down this road. The other thing that's going to affect a lot of them, even the Power 5 schools, is what if enrollment drops? Because you're not going to know if you have an in-class or online class until enrollment happens, because schools are social distancing, taking a classroom of 150, dropping it down to 30, and you don't know if you're going to be that 30 in the classroom or the other 120 that is online.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of parents are going to say, little Johnny going to stay home this year and go to community college and not deal with, are we canceling the homecoming parade? Is the rec center going to be open? What about the food court? I mean, the schools this year are going to absolutely be terrible to go to. And I think enrollment will drop by about half, and we'll just sit this year out and then see what happens. And what's the school going to do then?
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that. I've heard plenty of people firsthand that have told me, some students that I know, well, if it goes to an only remote learning situation, and especially like if they do what Harvard's doing and keeping tuition at the same rate, they're not going to do it. I mean, put yourself in that situation. Would you sit in front of a computer screen and pay $30,000 to sit in front of a computer screen and not get as good of an education as you would in person?
Nope.
No, and a lot of people aren't going to do that. They absolutely will take a hit, and that's why I continue to say that students got to be back at schools with all this. The data reflects they got to be back, and regarding what would happen to schools if they didn't have kids coming back, or if they only went to online learning, you're going to see a massive drop in tuition. On top of that, if football is affected like it looks like it might be to some schools, I mean, good luck.
Yeah, and we're doing all this to try to save a football season, and I think everything we're doing across the country is doing nothing but a detriment to it. I wish you could buy stock in community college right now, because those are about to explode.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely correct on that. They're gonna get a lot of students they may never thought they had a chance at.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
and we'll see what's left after all of this, but it's going to fragment a whole bunch of stuff. I think it's going to have a lot of unintended consequences that people aren't realizing right now. To business, to schools, to hotels, to everything, and we'll just see what's left after November 30th.
Yeah, it's like I said, the fact that how much it changes too is kind of the issue. We're sitting here talking about one thing one day here. Well, come on the show Monday and we could have new information. We could have new rules put in place. I mean, it is so ever changing. But like you said, and like I said, the decisions that have been made at a lot of these universities by leaders around the country, it has been lackluster to say the least.
It may trickle down even to public education. If you're talking about sending your kid to school and trying to force them to wear a mask all day long, or doing some sort of online version, there's going to be a lot of parents that just say, I'm not messing with it. I'll either transfer schools, and the schools won't get that daily average money for attendance, or they'll just sit your kid out a year. What's it going to hurt? Yeah,
and that's the thing is, and I've talked about it with a lot of people about that exact situation, because there has been talks that there already are some schools around the country that say we're not going to do it. And public education for young kids. When I bring up the number that 67,000 pediatricians have said kids got to be back in school, and it's just swept under the rug like they don't know what they're talking about. There's proof, there's data. We got to have kids back in school. This has been an issue for me personally, because I was a part of a school before I came here, then dealt with a lot of little kids, and I'm telling you what, kids, there are plenty of them. If they were to miss another school year, and this goes up to college too, I mean, good luck with the rest of their life. It's going to cause, that's the thing, getting out of school and keeping kids out of school is going to cause more damage to them than the coronavirus ever would.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
and if school districts can't make their payroll, then they're going to have to start laying people off if they're not getting funding.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's next, because a lot of teachers have received full salaries during this whole time. But I'm telling you, that's about to end if you can't get kids in school for full days. It just is.
Yep.
I appreciate the phone call.
Hey, appreciate your show.
Thank you. Yeah, that caller is right. And I'm glad he got me, onto that subject, because, and I might have to say this for the next segment, but it is true. There are school districts and schools around the country, public education, that is looking up to these universities. And if they see universities say we can't have school, well, what do you think they're going to do? Until administration in these schools says, until one of them finally stands up and says, we're going to have school, or we're going to do it this way, but we're going to have our kids in schools. Why? Because I've, believe it or not, sat down and looked at data and understood that it's 100% doable. So if universities make the move, yes, public education, we know, middle schools, high schools, little kids and in preschools, will follow suit. And it will be detrimental to some of these kids. Seen it firsthand. It will. We're going to round out that hour talking about that. I love that topic. I mean, it's fascinating, and that's where we are. In hour number 3, feel free to call in. We'll talk more about the Big Ten's stupid decision. Also looking down some of the list here of some of the stuff that's going. Not a lot going on today, but I've got an issue with the NBA. Okay? Got an issue with the NBA. Got an issue with what they're doing in the bubble. Got an issue with them coming back and playing. I'll tell you what that issue is. Also to come here on the Robert Allen and Friends Show, Triple Play Sports Radio Network with Patrick Wheeler next. Welcome back, Robert Allen and Friends Show, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler filling in with you for Robert. Hanging out with all you. Thanks for listening. Appreciate it. Thanks for hanging out on Friday. Everybody gets ready to have a great weekend. So raining right now like crazy here in Stillwater. So hopefully that clears up and you guys can have a good weekend when it all starts to go back to normal in terms of weather-wise. Again, tomorrow, starting in Stillwater, got to have that mask. Mandatory through November in public places, most of them at least. You can go to cityofstillwater.com and I think it's .org actually, and check out all the guidelines and the little details about when and where exactly those masks are required. I'm fired up. Fired up about this topic that we talked about in the last segment, and it relates to sports in a way, but at the same time, we talk about whatever. You're on Robert Allen Friends Show. And look, here's the deal. I am actually curious how many people are listening that have kids, okay? Younger kids. Or if you've had kids before and they're older now, whatever. Even if you don't have kids, I want to know, would you send them to back to school this year? Do you feel safe enough to send them back to school? I want to know. And there's multiple ways you can tell me. Call in, 533-1020, 533-1051. Social media, get on Twitter, at The Patty Wheels, Facebook, Patrick Wheeler, Triple Play Sports on Facebook. Find us there too. And for all you Triple Play texters out there that are used to texting Robert, I'm going to open up a number. Open up a phone number you can send me a text to. And to this question, you can answer it. You can say yes or no. That's all you got to say. Would you send your child back to school? If you had a child, would you send them to school? You can send a text at 417-489-0790. 417-489-0790. You can use that as your text line, too, to ask any questions. But I'm curious. I want to know what the overall answer would be. Why do I ask? Because in this last topic, the question was brought up. Well, people realize what would happen to public school systems if universities don't have school. Yeah. I'm not sure how many people have actually thought about that. It 100% would trickle down. Just like everything else. Sports are doing the same thing. High school sports are looking into this what's going on with the Big Ten. And everywhere else are saying, well, if the Big Ten can't have football, we definitely can't. Oh, man. If colleges can't have kids on campus, we can't have kids in high school. We can't have kids in middle school. Can't have kids in preschool. Come on. I am telling people this from a firsthand experience, dealing with kids that need an education. Desperately. There are kids that will dominate in school. Always have been. They get it. They're just naturally intelligent. They've learned from a young age and been taught the right things. But there's also those that sometimes can't latch on as early, fall behind occasionally, behavior issues, whatever. And I'm telling you, not having them in school would be more of an issue and would cause future damage much more than the coronavirus would. That's not just a 100% guess by me. That is saying the truth. Okay? Saying the truth. Go look at the numbers. Little kids, not only are they found to not spread this virus to adults that much, but very rarely affected by it. 6 children have died from the coronavirus, 1 through 4 this year. 46 have already died from pneumonia. Never shut down because of pneumonia. I'm already getting texts. I love it. I love it. Feel free to text in. 417-489-0790. Tell me what you would do. First text message says, absolutely 100%, but with the recent passage of this city ordinance demanding all of us healthy people wear masks, I don't have much faith in the schools opening, at least in Stillwater. Yeah. And I think that might be the case to a lot of schools and a lot of towns, unfortunately. They're going to look at what the city does. But again, how much of that is, people in the school district not being able to stand up and say, look, we know what goes on in school. We know how to handle it. We're going to deal with it our way, Another text message. Yes, I'm sending my 7 and 9-year-old back, and the 7-year-old is immunocompromised going through cancer treatment. Wow, look at that. How about that? The kid there is already got health issues, and they're willing to send. I mean, yeah. People understand just how important school is for these kids. Let's go to the phone line. You're on the Robert Allen Friend Show with Patrick Wheeler. Go ahead.
Yeah, school is important, but I'm kind of missing I don't think people understand what's going on. I mean, their head in the sand. They think because the older people are getting it, there's no danger to children. I mean, that's totally not borne out with what we've seen so far. I mean, the percentages are lower, but look, have you looked to see what happened at the Kennecook camp over in Missouri?
Yep.
They had 82 positive after they had, at that point they finally said, we got to shut this camp down. I mean, you got 82 kids, 13 through 18, testing positive in one camp, and that's kind of like a school situation, I think.
Okay.
Maybe a little bit worse because they sleep, in the same dorms and everything, I assume. But I mean, so how do you explain that away?
Well, here's the thing. When you think about it in schools, so they're going to do testing for those camps and all that too. How much testing is going to go into the schools is what I'm going to be curious about in the middle schools and all that. Are they going to test? Are they going to test them every day?
Well, I don't know. I mean,
exactly.
That's yet to be seen. But I mean, you're saying people are going to send their kids back no matter what. They did testing. I assume there at the Kennecook camp when they came in, and maybe, but I know they didn't just all of a sudden say, "Hey, we got 82 positives here." As soon as everybody got in place and we're shutting it down, they'd been there for a while, and then they found out, "Hey, this thing is spreading like crazy, and we're going to have to shut it down." So, I mean, to me, that's kind of the closest thing to a school situation.
Okay, so with schools and the numbers that I've said and I've talked deaths here. Okay, a very small number of deaths for that age group, and they are very small amongst that age group in middle school and all of that. So with that being the case, would your main issue you'd bring up is that you think that those kids, if they had it, probably wouldn't know, would end up spreading it to older people that work at the school?
Oh, that's one factor. The other factor is they're finding out kids that have had it but didn't die have been exhibiting some other long-range type or long-term symptoms with the inflammation and other things.
Yeah, that was one study in one part of the country. Yeah.
Well, I think it's been in other parts of the world, not just this country.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's so unproven, unknown. What are you long range? Nobody knows what's going to how this is going to affect people, even if they had a light case or if it was a child and some kind of a long-term damage was done. I mean, isn't that kind of rolling the dice?
Look, that's what I've said this whole time. We roll the dice all the time. We roll the dice with risk every single day. We go in to schools with little kids knowing that they could be exposed to pneumonia or the flu and have a much greater chance of dying from that. So we roll the dice all the time. We'd add this to the list, don't we?
They don't have a much greater chance of dying, getting pneumonia in a school. I mean,
why not?
Seriously. Yeah, they have lots of flu, but the flu is a little bit different because the main reason people died from the flu before we knew what was going on is they got dehydrated from vomiting and diarrhea and all that. Okay, you stop that, you hydrate them with IVs and things, and then that you weather the storm, let the body have a chance to fight. And but this is a different cat. I mean, you can't just hydrate somebody for a week or two and then their body says, okay, I've got the upper hand here. So, I mean, I don't think you should equate it with pneumonia or flu. I'm just saying from what I've read and heard, there's so many unknowns here. I mean, I just think it'd be a big risk to put my child. If I had a child, I certainly wouldn't do it until we figure out what the heck's going on. I mean, there's too many unknowns.
Okay, I mean that's fair. That's fair.
We know about flu. We know about pneumonia.
Yep.
Yeah, there's people die, but we don't know. There's a ton of stuff we don't know here, so that's it.
All right. Well, I appreciate the phone call. I really do. Thanks.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, people can have their opinions on it, and there will be some people that when school comes back, they would say, we're not going to send our kids back. And I'm simply saying, yeah, I agree. There's some parts we still don't know about this, but we are sending kids back with that inherent risk to a bunch of other things. Okay? Not just the flu, not just pneumonia. My goodness, you could get in a car wreck on the way there. There's been studies that have been shown that have said, for instance, with the different age groups, the younger age groups, you're more likely to die of a car crash than from the coronavirus. Not saying you can't get it. It's easy to get. But I'm looking at long-term here with deaths, okay? That's what we pay attention to. Little kids, mostly asymptomatic at the same time. Wouldn't even know they had it for the most part. But I'm telling you, when you compare long-term damage, kids that would not get an education this year some kids that would miss a year. And maybe if they even did it online, it's not the same. That will hurt long-term way more. I'm telling you that now. Mentally, down the road, educational. I mean, some of these kids would not recover from it. Bottom line. We'll talk more about all this still to come. Hour number 3 of the Robert Allen and Friends Show next on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Welcome into hour number 3 of the Robert Allen and Friends Show, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. We're out here keeping it going on a Friday. A lot of fire coming from this station today. Wow. We're at the topic to end last hour about kids being in school. You know, we go everywhere on this show. Take a lot of avenues, but try to draw it back to sports as much as possible. And I'm saying, you know, for a lot of people that feel like it's a huge risk to send their kids back to school or whatever. You know, I just had to talk with Jordan. I've talked about it with friends and people before. You know, we inherently know and accept the risks that come with playing sports. And we go out there, and if you ever played football, you accepted that risk of getting an injury, one that could last a lifetime. You know, Alex Smith went out there for the Washington Redskins, accepted that risk that he could be hurt for a long time, broke his leg, and 15 surgeries later, trying to walk again. You know, we accept that risk of, if you go out there and you play football, get a concussion. Concussions are so common. Brain basically gets scrambled. And later down the road, everybody's heard the stories, right? Heard the stories of football players committing suicide. They got issues with CTE. Things just aren't right in the head. And why? Because they took the risk to play football and busted their head around. So we accept the risk all the time. In everything we do. Not just sports, but in everything we do. I took a risk driving to the station this morning. And based on my age and my health, I had a better chance of dying in a car crash on the way to the station than I did from the coronavirus. And I'm not saying that to be insensitive to those that have passed away, because it's terrible. It is. You don't want anybody dying from anything. But when we've been able to collect and accept numbers now and look at where the data is, that's just the truth. Not making stuff up, promise. Go check it out for yourself. But we accept risk all the time. And I'm telling you, if I had a kid, and I would really pay a lot of attention to this study that was done with the pediatricians. It wasn't just 67,000 random people on a poll. No. These were pediatricians. They take care of kids for a living. They heal kids for a living. Said they've got to get back into school. Based on the messages I've received, most of them, yeah, I'd send them back. Yeah, I would send them back. Heck, I got one that said their kid is sick, going through cancer treatment, and they would send them back. Because people realize there are a lot of people that are able to read data and understand it. Some aren't. It's been made clear, but some are. Again, I'm still curious. We'll talk about a lot of other stuff here, get back into sports, I promise, but still curious if you would or wouldn't. Hit my social media, send me a text, 417-489-0790, 417-489-0790. You don't have to say, talk about that. Tell me what's on your mind. I'll answer your questions. But it's probably one of the most popular things to discuss in today's world is that topic. And a lot of eyes are going to be on a lot of universities. And man, we hope they make a lot of the right decisions, in a time where it's popular not to. Okay, back to sports. This I love looking at polls. I love looking at what people apparently think, especially in sports. Because in a normal world, in the past, we'd probably be sitting here debating, what's going to happen, who's going to win in college football, who's going to win these upcoming games. Now we're at the point where, are we going to have them? So this poll is pretty interesting. Top 10 running backs in the NFL. Look, I've said for a long time that I feel like the running back position is so undervalued. So undervalued. That's the first thing people talk about. You can get a running back anytime. They're not that big of a part of an offense anyways anymore. It's all quarterback. People, we got to start valuing the running back again. And Chuba Hubbard has made that clear here at Oklahoma State. That my position still matters, boys. My position still matters. And maybe he's in this list next year. But here's the list. Top 10, according to, let's see, ESPN said, according to more than, this is the best part, according to more than 50 NFL executives, scouts, and players, they filled up the rank with this. This is not just random fans, random people, whatever. No, 50 NFL executives, scouts, and players. Number 1, Saquon Barkley. Okay, I'm really not sure how Christian McCaffrey is not number 1. That dude absolutely destroyed the league last year. His production was insane. And I think he saved the opinion of a lot of people when it came to the running back position. People said, oh my gosh, the running back position does still matter. Look at that. The Panthers didn't really have a quarterback. Cam Newton was gone. Teddy Bridgewater wasn't there yet, so Christian McCaffrey had to carry the load. Heck, if he could have thrown the ball 5 times a game, he probably would have had to do that. He caught passes like nuts. He ran the ball like crazy. He should be number 1. But he's number 2 on this list. I'll read the top 5. Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey, Ezekiel Elliott, Alvin Kamara, Derrick Henry. How in the world is Derrick Henry number 5? This is according to NFL executive scouts and players. I'm fired up. Derrick Henry is the second best back in the league. He's pushing top for Christian McCaffrey sometimes. That dude is a beast. He got a pretty good deal. He got some money this offseason. He made it happen. He said running backs still count. Of course, we all know Christian McCaffrey did too. That's a very rich running back right there. But Derrick Henry said, I matter. That dude absolutely destroyed anyone in his path. He is a monster at a running back position. For 200 pounds of straight freight train. There was a play last year, he stiff-armed a guy twice in one run. He made a defensive player a leading blocker. It's awesome. And I fully expected in the postseason for him to come in and basically run the Chiefs over. Really did. But Chiefs held him in check. Up to that point, he was just casually, just rumbling over 200 yards a game. Someone around here knows how to do that pretty well. And I'm curious as what Chuba's going to do in the NFL because I love the running back position. And I think he has a chance to, after this season, get in there and make something special happen in the NFL for any team. Ezekiel Elliott, number 3. Okay, yeah. I'd probably have Saquon Barkley, number 3, but fine. Ezekiel Elliott can sit there. Alvin Kamara, number 4. Yeah, he's a stud. Last year was down. I don't think they gave him enough chances. That's because Latavius Murray decided to start balling out as a backup. I'm sorry, I said Derrick Henry, number 5. Dalvin Cook, number 6. He could probably be bumped up on that list, but I can see it. He's going to have a good year. Nick Chubb, number 7 with the Browns, yeah. Joe Mixon at number 8 with the Bengals. They put a Cincinnati Bengal in the top 10 running back position. Okay. Aaron Jones with Green Bay has something to say about that. Josh Jacobs with the Raiders, number 9. I think he could be bumped up. I would actually put Josh Jacobs at number 7. Let's put him at 7, move Nick Chubb down the list, and then Le'Veon Bell comes in at number 10. What? Yeah, in the past, Le'Veon Bell is pretty dang good, but last year was a travesty. He signed a way too big of a deal to go to a really bad team in New York and was extremely unproductive. Now, a lot of that has to do with the non-existent offensive line and quarterback that just likes to get mono and not be able to play. But Le'Veon Bell, really? Is it 2017? Is it 2016 that I'm living in? Some of these polls sometimes, and I see who they're given to, and I'm like, an NFL executive said that? Really? Sure that wasn't some rando on the street? Yikes. I think Josh Jacobs is an absolute beast. And that's me as a Chiefs fan talking about a Raiders player. So it begs the question, when Chuba Hubbard gets into the league, where does he fit in with his style at running back? I think the best part about his play, too, that he's mastered, to me, is being able to catch the pass out of the backfield. Because that has become such a part of the NFL running back position. If you can't catch passes out of the backfield, good luck. The power runner has disappeared, except for I'll give you Derrick Henry. He really doesn't catch a lot of passes, even though they should use him more. So Chuba has done a good job already of establishing himself as a dual threat back. I think, too, in the NFL, with his speed, his agility, you can line him up in different sets. You can send him in motion. You can send him out wide occasionally, put him in the slot at times. You can utilize a little bit of a Tyreek Hill in him. I was listening to, I think it was, yesterday, Afternoon Sports Drive, a guy called in and said, there should be some receivers coming into the league that said they should start thanking Tyreek Hill for paving the way in terms of being more than just a normal down-the-field wide receiver. But I would say the same thing goes for the running back position. Because Chuba's going to get in the NFL, and whatever team he's with, unless it's just some crap team, which hopefully it doesn't happen for him, but he's going to be throwing out wide-out sets. He's going to be put in dual-back sets. There's not going to be a lot of power I. There's not going to be a lot of cowboy back stuff going on in the NFL. There's going to be him as a lone back, and he's going to be moving a lot. And that's what I think we're going to see a lot this year too, hopefully. How much more can we get Chuba in space? Because watch out when that happens. Now, I really do have this love affair with the running back position. A lot of people, when they think football, they immediately think quarterbacks, wide receivers. I love to focus on the running backs. To me, they're some of, if not the most athletic people on the field at any time because of how much they're being asked to do in today's day and age in football. At every level. I think, too, start teaching that a little bit in high school. You know, back where I'm from, it's good old Southwest Missouri football, and it's let's pound it up the middle with our fullback and occasionally use our running back in space, our tailback in space. I'm telling you, they're behind the times. A lot of high schools now start using these running backs as more than running backs. Put them in space, give them a chance to get open. Put them in split backfield situations. Put them in the ability to run short intermediate routes. That's the thing is, I think used to be, if you played running back, it was you're going to take reps in practice running through the what's that thing called that nails you when you run through it and swings back on you, all that stuff. Now it's going to be, okay, this half is that, but this other half, you're going to start running routes, buddy. You're going to start taking some passes your way. Dual threat running backs are the future, and I am pumped for it. That's why one thing I hope this year, because I thought I talked about this last year a little bit, or actually yesterday, I should say a little bit and a little bit last year, but, you know, Chuba, he wasn't discussed enough in the national landscape of things. If you're just watching from the outside in, if you're not focusing on Oklahoma State, you know, you hear more of last year was what? Travis Etienne. It was Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Jonathan Taylor and J.K. Dobbins. But Chuba should have been right up there with the discussion. Now, I know he was eventually a little bit in the Heisman, but why wasn't, you know, for instance, when I was watching Mizzou get their butt kicked, why during halftime, during the reports, didn't I hear about Chuba Hubbard dominating? I feel like he did not get enough coverage at all. Made a statement, and then this year he will. Now, it's going to be for multiple reasons. We know that, but his play is going to speak for him a lot. More than what happened this offseason. We'll dive into that a little bit when we come back, because I know a lot of the topic has been, and here's what I like to do. I like to assume that the Big 12 is going to do the right thing and have football, and I like to assume that it's going to be basically normal in terms of a schedule. But so going off of that, I'm going to talk about what exactly is expected of Oklahoma State this year, but also what is expected of these skill position players, because these guys are the X factors. You know, they're going to make a difference in the Big 12. And hey, they might all of a sudden have a shot. Who knows? But they might all of a sudden have a shot at some serious, and I mean serious, competition to start off the season. If Oregon State's not going to be able to pull this off, and the Pac-12 limits them from coming down, who's going to fill? We're going to have phone lines open. If you think you know who Oklahoma State should play in that first week instead of Oregon State, let me know. I'm curious. I know a lot of people have floated different ideas. What's yours? Feel free to call in. We'll be back and talk about that next on the Robert Allen and Friends Show with Patrick Wheeler. Welcome back. Robert Allen and Friends Show, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler with you as I continue to fill in for Robert, who I hope is enjoying his vacation. Hopefully it's not storming on him wherever he is, as it is here in Stillwater at the moment. Let's look at other text messages. They continue to come in. Feel free to weigh in, 417-489-0790. Going back to the coronavirus and children here. It's a long one. Clearly there is risk inherent in every choice. However, is comparing the choice of an individual against the choices an institution must make when expected to consider the general public in their decision, making an intellectually authentic comparison. Look, and that's the issue I brought up to, you know, when I think about what some of the things that I'm comparing and all that is, and that's the thing I think too, we can compare it to the Big Ten. is that there, like I said, to open the show, it's not only that, but there are people in these institutions that are afraid of what would happen if they didn't say what they think is right, or if they didn't say what they think is going to be interpreted correctly by everybody. But I think that has to do with it a little bit too. Now, yeah, at the same time, you got schools that are afraid. I think they're afraid of lawsuits, especially public schools. But then again, when I think about that, some people say, well, and then, they go in, might get the coronavirus, but how could you prove it? Could you prove they got sick at school? Continuing the text, the same might be said for comparisons of risk. It seems many comparisons, driving, flu, pneumonia, sports, etc., are drawn when the risks have been well documented and at a macro level very well understood. With COVID, the known risks are still developing, still being identified, and very much an unknown long term. With every choice to act, there is risk and cost. How much more might the risk and cost be when inaction wins the day? Regarding that first part there, when risks have been drawn because we've been able to document them with some of these things, yeah, but have we not been able to document risk with the coronavirus in a pretty decent way, in a pretty factual way? I mean, we've got numbers out there. I've already listed off the numbers for the kids. So we take with what we have, and you have to ask yourself this question: is taking what we have and knowing that kids are very unlikely to be affected by this, at least for now, do we balance that out and do we decide, well, knowing that it's still not worth opening schools? I don't know if people understand really what I'm trying to get at, the long-term effects it would have on kids if schools weren't open. I'm not just saying that. It would absolutely destroy the minds of some of these kids. And I've talked to a bunch of parents before, say, well, we can just go online. Half of these people, some of them still don't have Wi-Fi. They don't have internet at home. Go online and try to have your school online. Well, they can't even access it. It's actually unbelievable to me that this day and age, we don't have Wi-Fi just readily available for everybody in every spot of the country, for crying out loud. And accessible and not at a high price. That still blows my mind. The text continues with, by the way, I support physically present schooling. I also support individual choice when not used as a hammer against choices made in difference to the choice maker. I also value the need for institutional choices carrying more weight than individual choices at the macro level. Look, I am all for individual choice. I absolutely am. That caller said that, yeah, I wouldn't send my kid. Fine, that's fine. I mean, I'm not gonna rip you for that. I'm not gonna say that's the wrong decision for you to make. You know your kid more than I do. But I'm saying, from being in the situation firsthand and seeing a lot of these different kids that learn on a lot of different levels, I would 100% send my kid, if I had a kid, no matter the age, back to school. They have to learn. They have to be, and here's the thing. Why? Because at a young age, do we realize how much is developed in these times for some of these kids? Not to mention that, but think about it socially. Think about it mentally. Kids being set out of schools for another however long, year, whatever, down the line, can't interact socially. They have mental health issues. The list goes on and on and on and on. That's where you have to say, is the risk that we are learning of now in today's day and age worth opening back up so kids can get an education? I mean, because I have seen plenty of people that have said, look, here's the thing. Here's the thing. We look at numbers and we look at everything that comes in and we say, why in the world can this happen and this can't? Why are some schools able to do this and some can't? Look, because we have different people that understand things at a different level, man. and it's all over the place. Text messages are blowing up. I love it. Let's keep it going. COVID-19 is so dangerous that you have to be tested to see if you even have it. I mean, how many of these positive test results represent asymptomatic people? We've been lied to about the numbers since day one, and we continue to be lied to about the numbers. Obviously, the more you test, the more positives you're going to find. But let's take a harder look at the death toll and the hospitalizations. I'm going crazy with this crap. Sorry, Patrick. By the way, you're doing an excellent job filling in with Robert. He should be worried. Haha. I appreciate it. I really do. Yeah, Robert, I like to bring a different topic and stuff every now and again to the show, but love what Robert does. Obviously, he would be killing it right now as well. But thank you for the compliment. Yeah, it's see, that's the thing I've tried to throw out to people is, with the death rates and all that, they were good. They have been consistently going down since we peaked in April. I think people too, when they look at the headlines, it's going to be, well, cases are exploding in a lot of states. That's the truth. That's 100% the truth. The age, though, for these cases has gone down. So I think that's extremely important. And what have they gone down to? Well, around the age that most college students are, around the age that most football players are. And yes, there are a lot of asymptomatic cases. So we got to take all that data into account as well. I get that cases are going up. Hospitalization rates, for the most part, haven't been extremely too big of an issue. Now, that could change. I mean, we after 4th of July weekend here, we could see numbers that have been delayed and come out and say, well, we've kind of got more of an issue now all of a sudden. But I'm telling you, when things open up, like they are, because we can't stay closed forever, well, we're going to get a lot of people that are going to be testing positive that never would have. And they most likely, if you're in the right age group, if you're healthy, you're going to be okay. Another text is the person that has a child fighting cancer, even his doctor is supporting him going back to school. Interesting. The Jimmy Everest Center has been tracking childhood COVID, and the cases are small, and those that get it have done well with it. Yeah, that's true. Says that his or her child is the one with cancer, and even his doctor says go back to school. That's powerful. I mean, if we're going to listen to some people, it should be medical professionals, right? Or pediatricians. They're all for it. And I don't think they would come out and publicly say, 67,000 of them, that we need kids back in school if they didn't really believe it. Or if they thought it would be a risk to their health. I mean, really, does that make sense? Do we think that pediatricians, doctors would say, yeah, I'm willing to take a chance? And say that these kids might die because of what I said? I doubt it. They know what they're talking about. Numbers reflect it. And there will inevitably be, there has been this whole time since this all started, there will inevitably be this comeback to, Patrick, oh my God, you're insensitive, you don't care. And again, I say, never once have not said that the coronavirus isn't serious, shouldn't be taken serious. But I love to go back to when we find a way to live with everything else, this is no different. We're finding a way to live with it and deal with it and adapt with it. And it is changing, but doing a good job. For the most part, for most people. Another text, when we send our kids back to school, I'm curious to hear from the perspective of the teachers that may be more heavily impacted by the students, potentially different infection rate and impact when acquired by teachers. Fair. I also wonder, with such a large percentage of older teachers in the system, will we have enough to hold classes or replace teachers if they begin contracting COVID? Yeah, see, that's the thing I brought up, and especially with colleges, too, around here at Oklahoma State. I think there's probably plenty, and there is any university, too, any elderly professors. There's quite a few. And I think what needs to happen is, if this is the case, if there are elderly people still in middle schools that teach too, which there are, or those with underlying conditions, what needs to happen with reopening schools is they need to be given the opportunity to teach from home. And when they say, and that's the thing, is there's going to be probably some schools that come out and say, we're going to make this be the rule, that if you are, I don't know, what would they put it as, 60 or older or something like that? 60 or older, we just don't feel comfortable having you here. Or if we know, if you've disclosed to us and made it clear that you have an underlying condition that could be affected, we would like you to teach from home. Maybe that affects one class, you know. But if it were able to be a small number of teachers, a couple of them that went and got to teach from home compared to the whole school, we would take that. The infection rate, yeah, it would be different. But for instance, I love this topic because my mom is a third grade teacher. They are having to go back to school, and they are having to wear masks. I think temperature checks are given at the door every day. They're going to be getting temperature checks on the bus every day. So teachers are being put in a place where they're going to be able to be protected and be able to protect the students. But you should see some of the regulations that not only in this school that I'm talking about, but that will be around in other schools. You know, that's the problem. We're going to get kids back in schools in some places, but even then, the lack of being able to socialize with other students, the lack of being able to have a recess, for crying out loud, a break from the day. Oh my gosh. Another text. I'm 69, still haven't worn a mask. Tested negative recently after being exposed. I'm not scared. Oh, really? Okay. Tested negative after being exposed. It's interesting. 69 years old. So in that age group, you would be considered more, you know, susceptible to getting this virus. And I think that's the thing is, you know, you see a lot of people, and I don't blame them. It's human nature. That age group, look, they lived through a lot of things. Lived through a lot. And they're just not, you know, jumping at the opportunity to make things a huge deal with this and being afraid with it and all that. And I love the perspective of people that have lived through a lot being able to say, well, here's what I think we should do with colleges and things like that, because they've seen more. So it's interesting to hear what they have to say. I appreciate all the text messages, everything you guys have been sending in. I love differing opinions. Isn't that great about this show? Is we can have different opinions and talk about it. It's fantastic. You don't find that anywhere anymore. Pretty rare. But discussions are important. Facts are important. Different opinions are important, and listening is important. If you guys can take away one thing in my time on Robert Allen Friend Show, it would be that. I promised we were gonna talk about OSU football a little bit more, and we will to round out the show. Probably get into a little bit more of NFL too. Now, are these seasons going to happen? Hit back on some stuff that Jason Whitlock talked about. I think he was fantastic. He knocked it out of the park to start this show. If you didn't get to hear the beginning of the show because it was right off the top, he's with Outkick.com, and he absolutely destroyed it. I mean, just he was great. He's been on recently. I think he was on Tucker Carlson show on Fox News. He's been getting a ton of major press. Josh Hawley in Missouri recently gave him a big shout out. You know, he's a big deal. So it was pretty cool. I enjoyed talking to him. He had a lot of good points. If you didn't get to hear it, I will get that up on the Triple Play Sports and my personal YouTube page pretty soon here, so everybody has a chance to go back and listen, see what he had to say about. Well, he talked a lot about sports happening, when they're going to happen, if they're going to happen. Oh boy, that topic never gets old, right? We will come back here on the Robert Allen and Friends Show. We'll talk a little bit about OSU football, talk about the NFL. You can still send in text messages and call in real quick before you have your last shot here, because this is your last chance before we hit on to the weekend. I will be back on Monday as well, though, to keep filling in for Robert until he gets back next Tuesday. We'll be back with more on the Robert Allen and Friends Show right after this. Welcome back. Robert Allen and Friends Show, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler filling in as we wrap it up here on Friday, heading into the weekend. Hope everybody has a great rest of your Friday, great weekend planned, hopefully. Go enjoy it. But Stillwater, be ready to enjoy it with the mask. I think I read that businesses for sure can get a $500 fine if they're not enforcing the whole mask rule being put in place. I'll be honest, I didn't expect it to have the date on there as long as it plans on lasting. into November. Now, I think they said that could obviously change if things required, but wow, that's why I say get used to it if you plan on going out in public during all this. And I tried to prep some people that I've talked to around town and stuff, and say, you know what, we've had some cases when 20,000 students come back to Stillwater. We're gonna have some more. We're gonna have a lot more. And my curiosity is going to peak because I want to see what universities do when this inevitably happens at schools around the country. Not just Oklahoma State, but any school that's bringing back 20,000 plus. There's a lot of them. Is it going to be this response like, oh my gosh, we weren't expecting this, or we got to shut things down? There's going to be the occasional school that's going to say that and act like, oh, we didn't expect this big of an outbreak. Well, things are open, and if college students are going to be college students, we're going to have cases. And, that's kind of what I think is important about Oklahoma. Nobody likes to talk about Oklahoma, I get it. But the numbers of not having any positive tests in this last round of testing, that's big time. I actually am curious as to how much of it goes back to the players over there in Norman not going out as much, not being in public as much, or around large groups. I really am, curious how much that attributes to it. And I think the good news is, too, we're seeing cases of this virus for some people really not, affect and take as long as originally thought. Jimmy Johnson is a great example. In the racing world, tested positive, and then it was like, a week later? Less than that, I think. It's like 6 days, 5 or 6 days, he tested negative. Got over it that quick. And, with a healthy athlete like that, I think we're going to see that. I pointed it out to the Oklahoma numbers there. 3 of them were active cases a week ago, and now they're not. Try to name me more fit, healthy athletes, or fit, healthy people in general than college football athletes. They realize it's serious. They realize they got to take precautions, but they also realize they can overcome. And that's going to be the thing. Is I also don't want, people just to come out and say, well, if Oklahoma State gives their latest numbers and there's more cases, these student athletes must not be taking it serious. Look, I don't know how else to explain it other than if things are going to stay open, Coach Gundy can tell his players and Lincoln Riley can tell his players as much as he wants. Now, look, if we want to have a football season, we got to make sure we're not having these outbreaks in the team. We got to be responsible with each other and for each other. But we've all been 18. We've all been 18 to 22. We've all enjoyed our time chasing girls around, right? We've all enjoyed our time being college students, most of us, I would think. Even if you weren't, you still enjoyed being 18 to 22. And that's going to be the case around the country. That's what happened with Clemson. That's what happened with Kansas State. They had their outbreaks, the numbers went crazy. Well, why? Because they got back to campus and they got back to their towns and they were college students. They went to the bars. They went to house parties. Now, there's obviously a line you can draw. We talked about on the Afternoon Sports Tribe, kids in Alabama that are just being dumb idiots and actually throwing parties dedicated to trying to get the virus. I mean, okay, let's draw a line there. Let's not be intentionally stupid. Maybe actually the whole mask ordinance helps out with the numbers a little bit. Maybe with college students here in Stillwater. Now, you don't have to wear it when you take a drink, though. Interesting. Oklahoma State football, I was thinking about it earlier. Where would someone like Chuba Hubbard land in the NFL? Like, I think he's going to have another great season in college. I think it's going to happen. I think college football is obviously going to happen. I think he's going to have a great season. and I think he's going to get more recognition because he deserves it. But where would he fit? I think he can make the Bears a better team. Thinking about running back situations. I think he could make the Vikings a little better. I think he could make the Cardinals better. What am I missing? But the Bucks? How crazy would that be next year if Chuba Hubbard comes in and plays with Tom Brady? If Tom's still playing next year. That'd be pretty cool. He might be one of the newer model players out of Oklahoma State a lot of people pay a lot of attention to when he gets to the pros. That'd be pretty fascinating. But here's the thing. Chuba, Tylen, Spencer Sanders, they're going to have to be the three-headed monster that comes out in game one, regardless of opponent, as the three-headed monster, if they want to have a successful season this year in the Big 12. That's no surprise to anybody, but I'm saying it's going to have to start early. And game plans are going to have to start changing. Because it looks like the way that it's going, we're all of a sudden maybe not preparing for Oregon State like they had been for a while. That's going to be the issue, okay, with these teams like in the Big Ten that are having to find new opponents, possibly Oklahoma State. There's a part of your game plan that's going to stay the same, but you're also going to have to start game planning for a completely different team, possibly. At least in the Big Ten you are. And that's going to take some time. That's why, you want, if the Pac-12 is going to go through with it, which I'm saying it looks like they are, you want them to make that decision now if you're Oklahoma State so you can figure out, first of all, what the heck's going to happen, who are we going to play, and secondly, how can we start game planning for it? You can only sit around so long and keep that game plan going for an Oregon State team that they literally would have put into the ground at the end of the first quarter. Things too, if you look at it from a coaching standpoint or even a fan standpoint, this was going to be a cakewalk non-conference schedule for OSU. They were going to blow through it. Almost, in my eyes, so much so, and you never want to hear this from a player or coach, but in my eyes, you could look forward to we're focusing really on the Big 12 when it starts up pretty quick. We'll get through these 3 games and blah, 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 but conference play starts, that's when we're really ramping it up. Those were going to be three easy wins. You were going to have a 3-0 start. And how much does that affect now if Oregon State can't come down? Who the heck do we fill in? And it's funny because the Alabama talk was weeks ago. That would have been a month or 2 ago. When it was initially thought, well, if Oregon State can't come back, who the heck is going? Well, how about Alabama? That idea was floated. People ran with it. I don't think it would happen, if I'm being honest. Kind of laid out the reasons earlier in the show. And it would be good and bad for Oklahoma State if it did happen. But I just don't think it's going to happen. Unless there is just this drastic change to where all of a sudden the SEC and the Big 12 are the only schools that plan on playing a normal schedule and have to find opponents within each other, unless they just want to go out and then see if they can find a smaller conference that's willing to come in. So, it's a long shot, but man, it would be fun to watch. And I don't think it would be a 54-12 route or anything like that. I think Oklahoma State would compete. I said, I think if this was the year to play in Alabama, or this was this would be the time. A team that is not the same as they have been in the past. And man, I don't think I've heard this brought up yet, like I said today, but how much would that rectify what's happened this offseason? Because it really would. The storylines would change, the headlines would change, the questions, I think, would change from media. Because guess where they're sitting now, as we've talked about, and everyone knows what the topics are going to be about. Hey, Mike, yeah, you won that game. Congratulations. What's going on with you and Chuba? Hey, Mike, you won that game. Great job. How's the locker room? Hey, Mike, have you thrown away that T-shirt? Hey, Chuba, has change happened? Well, if they beat Alabama in week 1, guess what it would be? Mike, wow. Fantastic job. You really, man, you got your guys to rally around you. You got your locker room back. It's clear. You know, you guys should be in national conversation. Wow. Chuba, you and Mike must have the best relationship ever. That you must have just got with each other over this time and just been best friends. And man, what a turnaround. Oh, my goodness. That's what the media does. They do it all the time. But it's exactly what would happen. Now you'd get that occasional dummy that would be in the background and say, hey, Mike, back here. You guys just beat Alabama, but how are you and Chuba? Hey, Mike, Chuba just ran for 200 yards, but how's he doing with you? Are you guys okay? You would get that dummy. There's always one, sometimes two. And a lot of you probably know who they are. I'm still learning, but I've been able to identify a couple who I think it would fall under. Because guess what? The media can be a fun job. It can be a fun career to be in. Okay? The media as a whole. It's fun. I like being able to come on and talk on the radio. But man, and this is the case for a lot of professions, probably every single profession, whichever one you're in that you're listening to right now, you can probably name. There are some dummies in these professions. But the media, wow, they might take the cake. There might be, I mean, the level of ignorance and agenda pushing that goes on in the media, regardless of what happens, could be completely different, is I think maybe, probably, tops out amongst all career paths. It's real easy to get into the media and be a scumbag, promise you. What's not easy, and I love, that's what kind of what Jason was talking about to start the show, is being in the media and actually being truthful and being willing to not be afraid. He said that. It was fantastic. If you missed, again, the Jason Whitlock interview, he was awesome. Check out Outkick.com for more sports. It's definitely worth checking out. I will get that interview up on social media as quickly as possible because it is worth replaying. That's going to do it for us. It's been the Robert Allen Friend Show on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. I'm Patrick Wheeler. Thanks to all you guys that listened in. Text messages, calls, everything. You guys are the best. Have a great rest of your Friday. TV 101 or TV 30 101 is next with Casey. And then at 3 o'clock, don't forget, Jason Elmquist will be on the afternoon sports drive. And he will have Carson Teal on with him, as well as Trey Cobb. You're going to get a lot of baseball, I'm sure, a lot of baseball perspective, but they're going to have to talk to, and I think I'm hoping for this to happen, they're going to have to talk about a lot of maybe conference changes. Because I'm guessing the Big 12, not the Big 12, the Pac-12 and the ACC may say something before 3 o'clock. So definitely be paying attention. Stay tuned. Triple Play Sports Radio. I'm Patrick Wheeler. See you guys on Mondays.